armor. Oh my God, it's so horrible. And then there was this enormous tsunami, and it was right around the same time, right around late 2004. They just bundled it and scooted it right in. And right at the last late night session, they penciled in something around about the border wall fence. I talked a lot about the border wall fence with Brad. And what's bad about that is there's a 10th Amendment issue there. Regardless of how you feel about the border wall, the issue is that Chertoff, as Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, was able, into one fell swoop, with just a little, nod from the Judicial Department, to waive 36 federal laws, like that, with nothing. Okay, that's a lot of legislation. He just blew through 36 federal laws to put up this fence. There's huge expanded powers that are awarded to the Department of Homeland Security through this act. So it is imperative that we stand up against it and push back at the state level, just like 20 other states have done, and that's why Real ID is considered dead today. It's considered dead because they need every state in the United States to put the hub into place and to move it forward. Even as I talked to Chief Judy Brown today at DPS, she said they are developing their technologies, they are developing their little think tanks to see how secure they can make the licenses, how they can try to minimize the identity transfer attributes. This stuff is going over the border. Everything that's on your license, everything that is attributed to you on this license, your brown eyes and brown hair, and your gender and your address, all gets traded with customs. In Canada and Mexico, they don't have any way to regulate your identity once it goes over the border. They're not going to say, well, let's keep Americans' identities secure. No, it's not like that. And if, say, an infraction, or if there's an identity theft ring somewhere just outside of the U.S. that target, like say Vancouver. If you go to Vancouver and they are stealing your identity and going back over into Seattle to capitalize on you, there's a big problem. It's really hard to extradite criminals from Canada to prosecute them. It's almost impossible, even though it's just right across the border. And it just happened, you could scoot right across and probably meet these people and touch them and beat them up or whatever. But you couldn't extradite them because Canada doesn't extradite their criminals very often, if ever. So good luck if your stuff goes over there and they steal your identity. So you don't want to give them that much control. So right now you have the control. It's not a done deal. This is really something that aggravates me. This done deal mentality. Oh, don't worry, it's already all set up. It's all over. Just it's done. It's a done deal. No, it's not. Don't ever think that. It's never a done deal. You do not have to accept your real ID. Okay? So here's what our goals are. Oh, I didn't get to the license. This strip on the back, this has been here for, 10, 12 years? Mm-hmm. How long has this been here before you noticed it? How many years have you had one of these on here where you started to notice it?
It was about 2000, I think.
Yeah, it's been at least 10 years.
That's when I got my license in 2000. It was 8.
Where do you think this information goes? I always wondered that. Well, it goes somewhere through AMVA, but this isn't a chip. This is a reader. This is a strip, magnetic strip reader, and it basically attributes anything on the front of your card to your identity. And that's still too much information.
I've got a guess as to where it goes. Belgium.
Right.
The big computer there is supposed to have something information on everybody in the world.
Well, if you find out where the coordination of all this is coming from, it's generally the central banks are applying leverage. Their members that are sitting on the boards of directors of all these trusts and NGOs and working groups and corporations and companies and stuff like that. It looks to me like the banks themselves are directing this social engineering policy. Banks are trying to justify their existence in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You and I know we don't need banks. You know, we can do cash, we can cut arrangements with cousins and stuff for credit stuff. The banks are not needed. They are trying to take total control of society so that nobody can even question, the validity of whether banks should exist or not.
They're really afraid of poor people, too. There was a woman here in the back.
What is on the strip?
What's on the strip? Everything that's attributed to your identity on the front.
So it's like my address. So they have it in code and also in writing.
This bothers me. Every time this happens, I feel like a really bad feeling in the pit of my stomach.
Where are you having it happen at this time?
Well,
And what would happen if you demagnetized it?
if you demagnetize it, well, that's a really good question.
Put it in the mic or what?
2000.
Would anybody like to see my license?
I noticed it every time I go to the money box. I never even realized that thing had any information.
Let me explain the barcode. When I voted this year at UT campus, I was approached by somebody. I wasn't in the line for more than 2 minutes and wanted to proceed when some guy turned around and said, "Can I see your ID?" And you don't need ID to vote. You just need to show them a document proving that you're a state resident and with your address. That's really that's the law. Sorry.
That's right.
That's the law, and that's all you need to vote. All right? But I said, I do not need ID to vote. And he said, yes, you do. And I'm like, no, I don't. But I will show you my ID, and I will oblige you, and I will show you. And I showed him that I had a California driver's license. This isn't my license. And then I proceeded, through the line, and then I was asked for my ID again at, where they look up your name and find you and that sort of thing. Can I see your ID? And as soon as they got my ID in their hand, they flipped it over and they scanned this barcode. So their voter registration was directly linked to the DMV records, which, I don't know, that really shouldn't be happening in Texas, especially...
You really need only a certificate.
I voted, I just needed my cardboard thing. I didn't even show my driver's license when I voted.
Well, when you go,
They were doing this to students.
When you go to the driver's license bureau and you get your driver's license, then you can check if you want them to mail you your voter ID.
So it's either that
Did you have a
or
voter registration card?
Yeah.
I think I did, but I misplaced it. But I think that wasn't the point of... I think me personally going through that exercise was supposed to happen. If there is fate or God or whatever you wanted to know, I went through that as a young person, or a younger person, not as young as I used to be, to understand what happens to young people who are not as informed about their identity. They don't know that they don't have to have an ID because they're being trained. They're being conditioned through these institutions, as just like I was. You need to give your social to do anything. If you want to open your bank transaction, what's your social? What's your social? Do you want to get any kind of transaction done? I need to see your ID. Go to Blockbuster. I need to see your ID. And there's a lot of entitlement on identity documents. Okay, and it's really not that necessary.
But
And
it's usually the certificate. I'm an election judge, and that's what we go by. If they do not have their certificate with their certificate number on it, the yellow color or the blue color changes every 2 years or so.
Then they ask for the ID.
Yeah, then they look at your driver's license. You do not have to show your driver's license if you have your voter's registration card. I know that to be a fact.
they should not have been doing that.
That's right.
They really should not have been doing that. I was out there with Vote Rescue after that happened, so that people could register any kind of identity complaints after that. It would turn me on to Vote Rescue. So I got through the rest of the election, and that's what I was doing. So let me get into the work that we're doing and the goals that we have for the 81st session. Everybody has to be really optimistic about getting out there and who's here from the 51st district? Is anybody here from the 51st district?
Which one is it?
That's Rodriguez, Eddie Rodriguez. Is that you? I think Eddie Rodriguez is going to be a friend. So if you call and talk to him about what we're doing or what you want to see happen with Real ID, that would be great. Because he's Travis County. All right, so we are working with the governor's office to help them understand and value citizens' legitimate concerns about privacy and identity security. We are suggesting some sort of a recorded acknowledgement with the current Real ID regulations and the regulated